Hey Papa, how's it going, man? I got some evidence that will point to who is the man behind the strings. Comprende?
Alright, what do you got?
Okay, listen. After careful deliberation and careful examination, it came down to one man. It's Baby Yoda.
Okay, even if that was the case, there's no way I can beat him. Plus, he's cute, so I don't want to fight him.
That's why you gotta get to training, Papa. The pandemic has made you lazy. Comprende?
No, I just haven't reviewed another Souls game. Plus, haven't you seen the craftsmanship of this broom? I mean, it takes down people in like 1 or 2 hits. It's amazing.
Man, with that kind of attitude, you're gonna forget how to use it. That's why you should go to practice. Comprende?
Practice? I'm here making videos. I'm supposed to be the main character, and you come in here talking about practice.
You know what? Forget about it. I'm gonna be the hero, and I'm gonna save us all. Comprende?
I believe it's safe to say that Mass Effect Andromeda came with immense hype. It was planned to ultimately follow up the original Mass Effect series and allow players to revisit the sci-fi world once again. With this hype, however, came very high expectations. While any one studio will struggle with this amount of pressure, BioWare did it in spectacular fashion with a ton of development issues since day one. With a lack of direction and just piss-poor management, this was shown within launch day. The game launched with a slew of technical issues, with the one receiving the most attention was that of the broken facial animations. Many patches later, and the game's single player was basically abandoned in August 2017, just 5 months after the game's release.
I played Andromeda a few months after launch and actually got pretty far into it, but was that more due to my love for the series, or was there actually some good buried within the mess? Either way, let's hit the mass relay and travel 600 years, light years or just regular years, who knows. This is Mass Effect Andromeda.
When starting a new game, you can either choose to quickly start as either Sarah or Scott Ryder, or to customize your character. I definitely recommend the latter since there are some really interesting features here. The customization sliders are fairly standard for your character as well as customizing your twin, but there's the option to have your dad actually reflect your character.
I figured we can have some fun with this, so why not create Uncle Remote?
Hey, you gonna put me in the game without my consent? You better show me how I look or I'm gonna sue you. Comprende? Okay, you know what? You've done a good job. I'm gonna give you a free pass, but only for now. Because next time I see you, you're gonna have to pay. Comprende?
Sure. Do you want to also see how your dad came out?
Sam, we need eyes out there.
Hey, that's a handsome dad. They did a really good job in this game. Unfortunately, the looks have not translated to you. Comprende?
Fun fact, Alec Ryder is voiced by Clancy Brown, who also voiced Lex Luthor from Superman the Animated Series.
Alright, so I'm going to talk about the narrative here, but I won't get too specific on key moments or key events.
The basic premise of Andromeda is that you have woken up from a cryogenic sleep of 600 years traveling from the Milky Way galaxy to the Andromeda galaxy. From here, you quickly realize that this wasn't the home you all envisioned it to be. Certain events ultimately lead you to become the Pathfinder, and it's up to you to now help humanity and the rest of the initiative settle in. I gotta be honest, the game takes way too long to get going. The pacing is more akin to Mass Effect 1 with introducing the players into the universe. While this is ultimately great for newcomers and helps with the lore and intrigue of the world, veterans of the series would rather just skip through it and get to the good stuff for how much retreading is done. Which, to be honest, there are great story moments throughout the game. Some of the mid to late game revelations provided a nice dark twist, as well as others invoking a feeling of pure badassery.
While I do enjoy these moments by themselves, it does lead to one issue I have with the narrative, and that is the tone.
The tone is just all over the damn place here. It struggles to figure out whether it wants to be a dark and serious sci-fi thriller or a space cowboy adventure. I believe either one can work with the right ingredients, but trying to mash them together with no cohesion is a recipe for disaster.
I usually try to be positive when I review video games because I don't like to dismiss someone's hard work, but there's just no getting around this one. The dialogue is awful. Just watch or listen.
Right? What happened?
To who?
To whom? And your goddamn father. Sorry, my face is tired from dealing with everything.
I didn't know you were biotic.
Don't worry, it's not contagious.
All right, time to get off.
Don't like being sat on, huh?
So what about the characters who say these lines, and specifically, what about the companions? With Andromeda, you get a brand new crew and squad mates to play around with. Overall, they're pretty okay, but some of them really get on my freaking nerves, mainly PB for being a class A weirdo that finds a way to piss me off.
I really can't stand when writers make these characters to just be quote unquote quirky. It's just lazy.
To be fair, these characters actually have some of the best banter when driving around the various planets or interacting on your ship known as the Tempest. I really do like seeing your squad mates interacting with each other and seeing their relationships develop. There's a great sense of camaraderie here that harkens back to the original trilogy and dare I say actually does a better job.
You talking about the Mass Effect trilogy? Man, you better main the guns because it's gonna be a war in the comment section. Comprende?
For the rest of the characters outside of your crew, there's way too many to really mention. Many of these you'll only meet for like a quest or two, then never again afterwards. This game honestly would have benefited from quality over quantity.
Which, when we talk about the gameplay, will be a running theme.
As for the Andromeda Galaxy, I liked it. I mean, I don't want to live here, but I enjoyed the feeling of being an alien in a galaxy shrouded in mystery and intrigue. Granted, what you ultimately reveal isn't the greatest and arguably underwhelming in some instances, but it kept me playing engaged throughout my playtime.
So that's enough about the narrative and the world of Andromeda, but what about the presentation of it all?
As mentioned previously, this game was trashed on launch for many issues regarding its facial animations. Thankfully, this has been corrected shortly after with patches. However, there are still animation glitches and stiffness throughout the game. I'm not entirely sure if this is due to the Frostbite engine or just the lack of development time and budget. For the rest of the graphics, it honestly looks fantastic a majority of the time. The Frostbite engine is definitely capable of some absolutely stunning moments despite the animation glitches I mentioned before. The voice acting is overall pretty decent. Some of the performances are excellent, including Mr. Brown himself. However, many are hampered by the bad dialogue I mentioned before.
Alright, on to the gameplay.
With Andromeda being a game about discovery and exploration, the gameplay does its best to reflect that. It's an open world game with various planets to visit and create an acceptable environment for the colonists. With how big these planets can be, you'll need something to help you travel it, and this is a vehicle very similar to the Mako known as the Nomad. I remember people groaning about this inclusion, but I was ultimately curious how this would be done. Thankfully, it controls far better than the Mako and can even be upgraded to perform better. However, it isn't perfect as slight inclines will require you to switch to its 6-wheel drive mode. What Andromeda does well is create a sense of verticality that wasn't in the original trilogy. You'll get a jetpack to help you dash around, as well as the ability to jump and even hover in place during combat. It sounds like a small thing, but it helps to separate itself from the original. And speaking of combat, it has its own fair share of alterations. While it retains many of the cover shooter elements the series is known for, the ability to dash offers a much higher tempo to the combat. What was ultimately a step down, however, is the streamlining and simplification of your squad mates. Not only can you no longer activate their abilities on command, but the squad AI is far worse and makes too many poor decisions.
I also can't stand when games do this because it becomes more about babysitting rather than actually performing as a unit.
While this may sound like the game was going to streamline everything, it ended up going the opposite for many other aspects. When leveling up squad mates, I usually just auto level since there's not much going on there. But for your character, there's a crap ton to play around with. You can use your skills to apply a wide variety of active and passive skills. There really isn't a restriction on what combination you can end up coming up with, whether it'll be a shotgun wielding biotic or a cloak and snipe engineer. The possibilities are massive, and in a way it's encouraged. You can pick a profile for your character eventually, and depending on the points you have invested will determine which profile you can pick. All give their own bonuses, and some can even make visual changes when dashing, giving your character a bit of unique flair to them. And speaking of characters and choices, the dialogue wheel returns but has been reworked a bit. Instead of your personality being either Renegade or Paragon, you now have conversation tone choices. The 4 tones are emotional, logical, casual, and professional. It sounds like a pretty good system on paper, but it doesn't do much gameplay wise. It mainly changes how people will react to you, but nothing substantial.
While the Paragon and Renegade systems are gone, there still is the interrupt system during dialogue. It just happens so rarely that I figured I don't really need to mention it, even though that's what I'm doing right now. Whatever, let's move on.
When it comes to quests, you'll need to do a lot of talking, whether it is a main quest or one of the billion side quests. These quests will usually involve talking to people, scanning something, combat, or some combination. Many of these quests, unfortunately, are just there to bloat this game and gain experience points. Honestly, would have been fine if half of these quests were removed.
Again, really should have taken a quality over quantity approach. Less is more, guys.
And once again, before I forget, the same can be said with researching and developing weapons and armor. To research a weapon or armor, you'll need research points from that technology, either Milky Way, Helios, or Remnant Tech. Once you research it, you can then create it using resources you find while playing. While I do appreciate the amount of weapons and armor available, a lot of them are not worth getting considering how tanky some of these enemies are. Honestly, if I have one word to describe this game, it would be bloat. There's just so much of it. I previously mentioned quests and the crap ton of weapons, but also in mining, scanning planets, and navigation. All these things severely drag the flow of the gameplay to a crawl.
The beautiful thing about the original Mass Effect trilogy was its pacing. It not only had great pacing from a narrative perspective, but also for gameplay as well. This is something that Andromeda suffers with too much downtime, and also something that Dragon Age Inquisition suffered from as well.
Alright, so there's a bunch more I can talk about along with some small nuances, as well as the pay-to-win multiplayer, but I believe I've made my case here. Regardless of how you overall feel about this title, I believe it's safe to say that this does not match the original trilogy and feels more like a B-team title. With that said, I often find myself playing for far longer than I intend when booting it up, and I just have to ask myself, why? Is it because of the sense of adventure, the feeling of discovery, my love and the intrigue for the Mass Effect universe? Or maybe a combination of things? I wouldn't say this is a bad game, but definitely an underwhelming title in many ways, as well as a waste of serious potential.
If this game was its own thing and wasn't in the Mass Effect universe, it probably could have done better, but honestly, who really knows?
Hey Papa, you done with the review? Because I have found the second piece to the puzzle, and this is the path you're gonna have to walk. Comprende?
Alright, what do you got?